I was inspired to write the book because I teach all levels of players, and the one common theme that I see the most is that most people have a lot of tension in their swing and a lot of manipulation in their swing. And I was trying to find a system to help golfers take a simple approach to create effortless power instead of powerful effort. Try to reduce manipulation in the golf swing. And really where I found myself after many years of teaching was taking the best from old school instruction, which really stemmed from as far back as Ernest Jones, and combining it with new school instruction, knowing about mechanics and the physics of the swing and everything that happens from a biomechanics standpoint. So all that we've learned over the years, I've come up with my own package, and it works for people. So I'm excited to share it.
Hello and welcome to the Jacobs 3D Golf Show, Season 8, and we're moving along, and we have a special guest with us today, Erika Larkin.
Thanks, Mike.
Erika has been here many times. We've done golf schools together, and she just wrote a book, A True Swing. So fill us in a little bit about it, and then let's talk some golf swing.
Awesome. So my book just came out, and Mike and I actually discussed a lot of concepts in here as I was writing the book. So thank you very much for your help on this. My idea about the golf swing, as I've been teaching now for over 15 years, was based around some pretty simple concepts, old school concepts, Ernest Jones, swing the club head, trying to get people to feel a swing that is free of manipulation and free of tension in order to help people move more naturally. But as I was pulling together my concepts to actually write a book and come up with the drills and the ideas that were specific to helping people improve their swing and explain how to feel and how to move the best ways that I found to help them, I wanted to try to back it up more with the actual physics of what was going on. And so in following a lot of Mike's research and all of his presentation of information over the years, I was trying to match up where the elements of the swing fit in with what I was teaching to see if it was valid and to understand a little better why what I was teaching was working. And so that's where him and I got together about a year ago on trying to match up my concepts with the science part of it. And it's been great because some of that information is included in here in the science chapter. We were able to map out some demonstrations of a true swing and see what the actual forces and torques were that were being created and try to explain why they were happening from my perspective in how I was understanding and explaining the golf swing to my students. So maybe you can also go into that
Sure.
side.
So it's always good when you have Dr. Stephen Nesbitt at your fingertips to help out understanding, exactly what's happening. And when you get into a concept of a true swing, and you're talking about the way the club is moving around the body, I'll borrow that club for a second, it was long thought for years that there would be some magical force that would line the club up. And I think what the whole golf world thought was like a centrifugal type force that automatically aligned the club and all that was actually the way the golfer was applying their pulling action, and that creating an angular response, as we call it, down by the bottom. So if I took this grip where I hold the club at the hub and I pulled towards myself, you'll notice that the club had an angular response this way. And then the golfer has the ability to either assist that or deter it and things of that nature. And what's interesting when I was reading through your book and I was helping you with the technical aspect of that part was you were talking about tension and trying to remove tension out of your golfer's swings. And a lot of that, I really felt like, and what I've noticed in 20 years of teaching now, is people who hit off center and chronically hit off the sweet spot, the club's jarring and moving, and it just creates a lot of tension, and then it feeds on itself. And then if I'm tense and I'm not moving the club well, I'm going to be making a very flat hub path type movement or a straight line, and there's not going to be that same angular response. So it was interesting to see how you would develop in your teaching system,
Right.
and how that aligns with exactly what's really
I'm
happening.
a big proponent of trying to get people, and I teach mostly, mid and high handicappers. I teach some better players, but that type of golfer to really free up their wrists to help themselves create a more natural move out of the club or whipping action without trying to force it to happen. And so I think where I needed clarification from the science perspective is to create that move out of the club. How was that going to happen without a physical pulling on the club, which is what I was trying to prevent and deter people from doing. So I think where I finally settled was really the body and how the body plays such a huge role in creating the forces and the torques to happen more naturally, is how we can take the hands out of the swing, which is the biggest source of inconsistency for that mid to high handicapper. And so when I explain this to people and I'm trying to get them to have different body motions to create this angular response in their swing, it's really about them feeling that it's no wrist, but then all wrist at the same time. And that's a contradictory thought or concept at first, but once they get the feeling and what that actually means, then they get it. And that's where the light bulb goes off for them. And it went off for me too, is how can I create ways for golfers to move and trust that that club is going to move out, let it move out by using their body the right way as opposed to actually using their hands.
So I think where the connect would be, let's take, and this is why I think the alpha man analysis is going to be so important, because let's say you just go and you get your typical motion capture, you put a couple of sensors on the body, like you see a couple of over-the-counter things you can buy, and you twist around and then the little thing registers a speed or a movement, and then, oh, your hips are doing that. No, that little sensor is doing that. So we're going internal into the body, so we're going to go and locate all the different joints of the body. And the reason I bring that up is how the joints of my body are moving, for lack of getting complicated, how they line up and how they position themselves puts you in a spot where you can take advantage of those natural forces. So if you have a high handicapper who, let's say, the body joints are completely out of line, and if you see the video I just made for the Golf WRX show, and you're completely, we'll call it out of joint alignments. Yeah, you're spun around, you're in a spot like this. I'm in a position where, you know what? If I don't pull hard,
right,
or if I don't do that, I'm going to miss the ball completely. So it's matching up those body parts. And that's why I like how you break the swing down, the backswing, the transition, the fall, and the things you do. It's going to help people position their body. And I'm the first culprit of being accused of making things very complicated. So I'll probably always do that. So we need people like you to make it for the everyday person. Back to the subject of the wrists. So the wrists only are so strong, and there's only so much they can do. You could try to make your wrist stronger, but the anatomy of the hand, how you grip the club, and what you can supply with your wrist is pretty limited. That's what we found. It's a very small amount of work is done in the wrists, but they're the conduit to everything else you've done that transfers it out. So you will have a large amount of reserve of force. I could use the muscles of my upper body, my hips, and through my arms create a lot of force, but what could be done at the wrist is somewhat limited. And so then what you're going to be able to put into the club is more dictated on how you adjust the paths of things. Mm-hmm. So if I want to use whatever wrist action I could use, whatever my wrist can supply, the path at which I'm moving them is going to either assist or deter what that is. And I think what Erika did a nice job doing is giving people a way to create a good hub path to create that different changes in how it's curving around and taking advantage of the club moving out more naturally instead of our last second move. So tell us a little bit about how you broke down the chapters.
Sure. So once you get past the sort of introduction about the concept for why I wrote the book, I go into the swing and start talking about involuntary movements of the body and just the idea that once you get your body into motion, you can actually create a free response of the wrists and the arms sort of moving. So if you get your body turning and pivoting and swinging, it swings the arms, that swings the wrists, and so just getting people to go through a series of exercises to really feel that they can create natural flails in their swing without making it happen. So introducing that idea and getting people to hopefully follow along and stand up and put the book down, I think is important. So it's a really active, hands-on process when people are reading the book. And then into the 5 phases of the swing, so breaking it down into the heave, which is a takeaway. The idea, again, the body's getting arms into motion. The tipping point at the top, where I feel a first flail happens naturally if you let it, which is where the wrists really hinge and the club gets loaded. A falling action of the body, where we shift our momentum to the target and start creating a position of structure where we get onto a forward pivot post on the front leg. And then the actual unwinding of the body, which I call the pivot, pivoting out towards the target in a good pattern and sequence, which allows the club to start moving out to the ball. So it's really important once we fall and start moving into that pivot phase that people understand how to maintain their balance and the structure of their lower body, maintain their posture so that they can actually let the club move out without forcing it. And finally then the release, which really goes kind of almost hand in hand with the pivot. You can, once one thing stops, you can kind of almost can't stop the other part from happening. And that's the beauty of it, is trying to explain and break down the swing into these phases to make people understand that you can create these natural movements in the swing without having to do too much work. So can we create effortless power and can we create natural movements? I think the answer that I try to tell people is yes, you can, if you get the right intention and you take out the tension out of your body to allow those pieces to fall into place.
Yeah, so a lot of what Erika's describing would fit directly into our hub path optimizer. So basically you would take whatever the golfer's doing at that time and adjust how their hub path is moving to get the most response out of the club. So, that's interesting. And one of the things I enjoyed working with Erika on is when she was putting the whole thing together, was sharing a lot of the alpha man with you, and I always enjoy, and especially for me, when I first started to learn the importance of the joints of the body and how structure and stiffness, we call it proximal stiffness, allows distal mobility. And there comes a point where I think we're all gonna see as golfers is, should we focus on what's supposed to becoming stiffened or what's supposed to become structured, or should we focus on what's supposed to be moving? And I think that's gonna be a big paradigm shift as we go forward. So Erika, give us one tip.
One tip. I would say that one of the biggest concepts that's really helped my ability to train students is when we talk about the release. I think a lot of people really get confused as to how the club moves out and when, and the fact that if they actually have lag, how do they let it go on time? And so really impact flail drill is a big one that I've used and that I've gotten a lot of success with. So basically have students take a set up position and get into almost a pre-impact position. And so once we get them into a downswing fall position, getting a pivot action happening and making them realize that as they unwind and rotate the body, how the front arm, shoulder, hip, everything's moving back up and around away from the golf ball, which naturally pulls the hand up and in and swings the club head out. And so that's the biggest sort of mystery, is how that happens in the golf swing, because everybody's still trying to do so much work at the bottom where they think they need to keep the handle forward. And so creating this maybe clear idea that as they unwind their body, that they're naturally able to move the club out if the wrist joint is free to flail. So using an impact bag or not, but doing some left arm, lead arm only type of practice rehearsals, or actually even hitting some shots that way where they can really feel the action of how the front side of the body opens up and how that leads to the release action has been really helpful in letting them let go through the release phase of the swing.
Yeah, so what's interesting and how you quit that, which is good, is you have to recruit the body to put you in a good spot. One of the things that we found is as the club gains velocity, it gets effectively heavier. And if you have, let's say, 100-mile-an-hour club head speed, down at the bottom of the swing, the club effectively could weigh 90 to 100 pounds. So you can't just heave around 90 to 100 pounds with your wrists. I mean, if you did that, you would probably...
One of the things I learned from you was a lot about rotational resistance, and I think understanding that better and communicating that to students has also really been helpful. And how when the club swings out, how the resistance is so much greater. You know, we think that everybody's doing so much to try to manipulate the bottom, and for them to do so, they have to be working overtime.
What you're seeing
right.
is, and this is a misnomer of what a flip is. When you see crazy movement down there, it's because they pulled linear so long, right? Well, you're gonna pull linear the whole time, but the linear portion is dominated so long, the angular is late and desperate just to get to the ball, and they're doing all kinds of crazy things. And I think good players even think that's a flip. The feeling of that late angular feels like a flip to them, but it's actually not. So if you're gonna move something that weighs effectively 100 pounds, you're gonna have to rely on, like you said, the left side of the body moving back in and up. It matches up nicely with Brian Manziel and his pullback run up and jump that he did in video 100 years ago. And that type of stuff is really dictating and changing the paths, which is so important. I think it's a great book to help you move around your hook path.
Thank you.
So we really enjoyed it. Thanks for coming. And if you're an ex-golf schooler out there, I highly recommend the book. And thanks for joining us, Erika.
Thank
We
you.
have a couple golf schools coming up, so you can come and work with Erika in New York when she's up here. And maybe she'll sign the book for you and maybe give you a discount. This is New York. We never buy retail
Let's make
up
a
here.
deal.
Let's
Jeez.
make a deal.